Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and I am once again joined by the Everwise Sai.
This is Sai joining the Everwise Lucid on yet another turn. I think this is our third one of the day, and the last one was pretty short, but we are in the middle of some very dramatic wars, so we might still see some big battles this turn.
Yeah, it's turn 71. We have some people bleeding out, and usually when you get to this point where like people start, then like the dying throws, like diplomacy is going to shift up. So that's I don't think we're going to see these big wars turn around, though. Of course, I would love to see that. But it's going to be really interesting to see how the next round of diplomacy is going to go.
Yeah, and those diplomatic shifts are kind of the only way that I can see the big two being dislodged, that being Pangia and Gath, because it just doesn't seem as though the other players are in a position to contest them unless they can find a way to break that extremely strong alliance.
Yep. Okay, message from tienchi here. I guess true to form. Do you want to continue doing the tienchi ones? You'll be the voice of
The voice of the dying,
the
sure.
voice of the Orient.
All right, so Latch. Erythia did a Flame from the Sky cast on our army as I feared, but they only cast it once and did not take a fight the same turn, so it killed a smith and 22 guys, most of them infantry chaff, so not a lot. I didn't even notice until Demosthenes pointed out later. I even wrote a message speculating on when our fiery doom would finally come. Maybe they will go out as stronger next time, but I'm starting to believe they won't or can't blast us away in the magic phase. Maybe Pan will tell them about murdering Winter. I'm starting to look at a massive overcast Vengeful Waters gambit while Illwinter is still up. That could be pretty nasty considering how high our Dominion is and the excessive numbers of very vulnerable mages deep inside it. That is actually one of the best things you can do against these pan stacks.
Yeah,
is they will
the
die to
sages
big
will lose
elementals.
100% of the time to elementals.
Yeah.
Unless it's
so,
like a size 2 one, then they have a chance.
Yeah, but the big elementals, even ice elementals, like normally you want the water guys,
Yeah.
but big ice elementals will handle sages no problem. So
Yeah.
I actually think that's a great idea. I'm surprised that like neither of us even considered that because like that is probably one of the best things that he still has in his book.
Yeah, for sure. It's really good.
Yeah. If we get it up in about 2 turns and Illwinter stays, then Pan will be losing about 30 to 40 mages a turn. Yeah. Of course, once Illwinter is down, temperature snaps back to normal instantly, and the spell becomes much less useful. I don't know, I still think it's actually pretty good. But we do have at least a good number of high-value points next to water or our fresh water. Betty gave us a lot of slaves, so with that we could get our blood in high gear, and maybe that would let us turn things around in the future. Arithia is making a pretty weak showing all around, agreed. So if Vengeful Water does keep Pan and Shib out, maybe we could make gains on them and finally take a Garth's cap while we are at it. Seems overly optimistic, to put it kindly, and riding on a risky gamble. Well, we will see what happens. Yeah, I actually am surprised that neither of us, I guess I just said that, but like, we didn't call out Vengeful Water as a comeback mechanism, but that's almost certainly the best thing that they could do. The only downside that I see is basically just that they're doing it against two big astral powers, and Pan in particular has that huge astral on their god, so it could be very easily dispelled as well.
Yeah, I think though, especially if they're making a play for Nexus, you don't dispel Vengeful Water.
Or at least you don't
I
want
think
to. Like you might have to in order to actually pull
you
this
just
off.
preach it out. But like, I don't think there's an existential threat that like, oh no, like they just preach up the Dominion and put up temples, and I think they'll be fine.
I guess so, but to an extent, like that very much limits how far they can push, and certainly how quickly they can push.
Yeah.
Because right now
Yeah.
they're fighting almost exclusively in TNG Dominion, and in, I would say, even very high TNG Dominion. Pan does have cheap temples, so, that's nice. They can, if they haven't been spamming them, then Vengeful Waters going up will make them. And Gath has Blood Sacrifice. So between the different things between the different nations that are fighting TNG, there definitely are decent Vengeful Water counters that can come out. But it would basically put a cold stop to the invasion as it is now until those spells get put into play. Or like Dominion push stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited to see what happens there. If they cast it's also really good against Astral Mages, just because there's not much a single Astral Mage can usually do.
Yeah, you basically need a water
even
bottle.
if you put gems on them, like they don't. You can put you put a few nature gems on a nature mage, and they can do swarm or something, right? Or you could do. And the other thing is because it's really punishing against communions because you need more mages. Whereas if you've got like a 5-path mage or something, okay, that's a really expensive mage. Maybe it's worth putting a water bottle on him. You can't water bottle 100 sages,
Yeah.
So
Pan's playstyle in particular, I would say, is almost like perfectly countered by Vengeful Waters.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. All right, continuing.
Latch. We are assuming Shiv will hit the Throne of Water with a force we likely cannot beat. So we are chomping at the bit to throw everything in the region at it for a good battle. I'm going to irresponsibly count on a combination of Vengeful Water, which might not go off, and Illwinter, which might be overcast by Vengeful Water, keeping our territory relatively secure while I march my armies off into a potentially suicidal battle. I don't have a scout on the cave next to Throne of Water, so for all I know an unstoppable Doom stack is already here, though I suspect I have another turn. Let's just hope Arithia does not throw Murdering Winter at them while they are on the way, or some other Doom hitting the army.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, so definitely, I actually do like that mindset of like, if you do think that you're out of the game, then at least try to give a good show, and that's exactly what TNG is doing here. So props to TNG, where even in their downswing, they're still trying their best to do what they can with what they can. And even pulling out the spell that, in my opinion, is probably one of the best things that they could have done, and which, neither of us had even thought to mention.
Right, and I don't think they're not like trying to give up. I think this is actually like, it's not even like, oh, I'm just going to give a good show and give up. Like this probably is the best move they can make, and it gives them a good chance to stay in the game as a middling state if it goes off. Yeah. So, okay, from Pangia, reporting live from Pangean headquarters. I have the Great Prophet or the Great Leader Warp PC with me. Mr. Warp PC, is it true that you let the horror cult survive on purpose to charm an astral abomination, or are you just too lazy to clear up bad events? Baguette. No way. Can you confirm that Pangia only managed to seduce its first non-independent mage at turn 68? Is that guy incompetent? I never know how to say that name. Chocolatine. I see that your forecast... I see. What's your forecast for the tienchi front? Optimistic or cloudy with a chance of wind of death? Ratatouille. Such smart. One last question. There are reports that you'll be setting up for late game life under Astral Corruption. Can you comment on that? Are you planning to cast Astral Nexus or Gifts of Nature's Bounty? Any word on the demon hordes that are about to kill us all? Beaujolais. And then, well, that's it for tonight, folks. Stay tuned. Okay. So he's not sharing much.
He's being aggressively French.
Yes. Okay, from Gath. Being much more forthcoming with information than Pangia, his partner, if we want to call him that. My blood economy is around 370 to 400 on average, I guess. While it's certainly fine, Xibalba probably has a larger amount of slaves, given that they've had about 180 on turn 36, and summoning things way more efficiently with Reign of Jaguars and a 20% discount site. Also, finally, Dom 10, from the initial 6 and 800 gold temples. The most interesting action this turn should happen in number 3. It's long awaited because Cold 3 just happened. PvE puzzle for Gath is actually quite hard to execute efficiently because of how fat mages are, and also because of the bless. If we manage to do it well, we get rid of a lot of upkeep and get horror safe horror casters, as well as some upkeep free blood hunters.
Yeah, if you can get the mindless thing, so he's talking about the Soulless conversion, which I guess we're going to look at later. But yeah, if you can get mindless on your horror casters, then you basically get rid of the normal downside of using that spell, which is the risk of getting attacked by the horrors that you're summoning.
Right. Well, but definitely should be unexpected the battle for the Silver Throne in 51 can be good, completely nothing, or a disaster, which is quite unlikely, but it definitely should be unexpected for Vedheim, which is the whole point of it. Perpetual Storm might be the longer term strategy because it affects Xibalba a lot, while at the same time Flying Ship is somehow unaffected. Yay. As are our sheds.
I didn't know that Flying Ship was unaffected. That must be some quirk as to how it's coded, because it doesn't give storm immunity.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I assume
I believe it too.
Yeah, that he's done the testing there, but that's not something that I've seen, and that's a very interesting quirk, given that Flying Ship does just give conventional flying.
Well, it's also weird because it doesn't actually give the flying ability to, like, you put units under a guy with Flying Ship, they don't have flying. They don't fly in combat. So it's doing something weird.
It's probably just the flying movement thing. That probably, if it works for Flying Ship, it probably works for the flying carpets as well.
Oh yeah, it might. But flying carpets are weird because you actually do fly in normal combat.
Oh, that might be the difference then, actually.
Yeah.
If it doesn't give flying to the unit and only gives flying movement, then that might be what makes it work.
There's actually a bug about the flying carpet in Dominion 6 right now. But anyway.
Yeah. Viewers will have to wait and see.
Viewers will have to wait and see. As our should. Igor Tomb and Gift of Kurgi also gain additional value because of logistics. So I'll attempt to make the tomb now, even if storm never happens. And I likely won't be able to afford it myself with my air income. It's still a good value. Okay. Yeah, these are both things that give storm power. Or this gives fly and storm. I can't remember if Gift of Kurgi gives storm power too, but this gives storm power 5, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and storm power just kind of incidentally gives storm immunity, which lets you fly in the storm.
Yeah. Message from Bettyheim. This will probably be a bad turn. I got no real vision of his huge stack. I think he magic phased on top of it before he moved the army on top of that throne. Deploying anything I have out is just going to get knocked out by his large economy of magic phase options or get patrolled out. Since I'm pretty blind, he's patrolled all my scouts, made it really non-viable to ever raid him. I'm playing to save some stuff and otherwise stocking up for some options to do a large en masse fast crown demonic cleansing matrix turn 1 bone grinding. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that is a cool trap. I think he'd mentioned doing a trap last turn, so I guess this is the form that's going to take.
Yeah, I love that idea because you're basically getting twice the value out of bone grinding. The only problem there is demons have a ton of hit points, so like trying to bone grind and kill the army, you need to do a lot of bone grinding still, even with demonic cleansing.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how many Gaijas he has left, he might just be able to throw away his god for this.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you lose the idol, but you kill a bunch of demons, and then you call the idol
right
back.
And the other nice thing is because Gath magic phased on top of his throne, there's a very good chance Gath is going to storm because Vettiheim doesn't know what the army is. And if Gath waits a turn and pings, then Vettiheim could ping and see what's going to be on top of the fort. So
yeah,
not a bad turn to teleport the god inside the throne if that's what you want to do. I should have done some cheese like that before. I tossed my army at him and before I spent a lot of gems and conceded a fort or two. But real lifetime, not a consistent Hydra partner, and I'm pretty bummed by the Arithia twist, as I've mentioned before. I think a big play, I can knock out at least a lot of his human mages with fast casting cleansing, a good amount of his Seir, if I have time available. I'll try to bait his stack by deploying my remaining Rimvetti and then deploying as many magic phase options to either A, play into wiping him after he loses his crystal mages and other human mages, or B, try to win the fight with big bone grinding play, causing enough HP damage and magic phase secure retreat routes. Only if, I have time to set this up. Can't give any promises, but would be nice to pull it off. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited for that too, especially given that Vettiheim has kind of been pushed back, that like, if they can finally pull this off, that could cause some real damage.
What happens here?
Okay, so they've got the Dark Lines up front. So those are...
So Gath is retreated. Oh.
No, Vettiheim is retreating. Those guys are...
No, but there was a Gath army on here. Gath moved his army off, is what I meant.
Oh, okay. Huh. Well, I suppose it's not getting hit by the trap at least, but I don't...
was trying to...
Interesting.
So he was on this, and he didn't storm. Instead, he baited out to see what it would be. Kinslayer died, which is this cool... He's a pretty cool hero.
Yeah. He's immortal, so he comes right back.
That's this guy.
Yeah, and he's annoying.
He's got blood vengeance.
He's annoying to have in your capital just because he causes bad events and disease and Reaper.
Does he have Reaper? Unrest.
It's Unrest and Pop Kill. That's what he's got.
Yeah. Pop Kill. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, not Reaper, but similar naughtiness that makes him unpleasant to keep in Gath itself. Oh, there's a... Okay, so he's calling horrors.
Well, does he have the horror harmonica? Is that what we're seeing here? It must be. Is this guy the holder of it? Wait, who's the holder of the horror? Oh, here we go.
Okay, so he's using the lumber construct for this, which is kind of interesting. They fill a similar role to golems in terms of just being a mindless sack of hit points. Mindless, of course, being the critical component because that's what stops the horrors from attacking the caster.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of just a bait on both sides. I'm going to confirm here if these guys retreated. Oh, yeah, okay, they definitely retreated. I was thinking there's a chance it could have been Wailing Winds, but no, they definitely were scripted to retreat.
The fact that they were scripted to retreat might mean that they were coming from outside and trying to go inside of the fort.
Oh, that might be right. And there's a proper Vetiheim army here too. So he magic phased in some adepts, killed the PD, and then supported it with a move and attack.
That's to
from Rimvedi.
That's to get himself a retreat route.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was the opposite. He was trying to get the mages out of the fort. That's what he was doing.
Oh, I think you're right.
So assuming that the
right, because it's only the mages who couldn't sneak. That's all who these were. Everybody else snuck out.
Okay, so he was trying to get those mages out of the fort, so he broke siege, set to retreat, with the idea being that, assuming that Gath is storming, that he's just going to be giving up on that fort. And then because Gath was in fact not storming and doing that trap of his own instead, he kind of outsmarted himself.
Right. Okay. So Gath has moved back over here. I don't know if they got cold feet. What did they say in their message again? He doesn't say anything about it.
He just said it should be unexpected for Veti. That doing this bait and switch with the harmonica.
Yeah. What should happen in number 3? Let's go ahead and check out 3.
This is his Soulless conversion.
Oh, yeah. So let's see how he does. What method is he using?
He's doing cold auras surrounding all of his guys to put them all to sleep.
Okay. That's a very tricky one. I've never seen this one successfully executed. Presumably it does. Okay, they're turning. They're going to get a tremendous amount of damage, though, and it's going to be head focus damage because it's fatigue damage. So you get like a lot of mutes like this. Yeah, see a lot of mutes. This is not a good way to do it, in my opinion.
Mute, battle fright, and dementia, even feeble mind are potential head afflictions.
Yeah. So they did it. It converted them better than I thought it would. But I think at a pretty great cost because he didn't
lose or he didn't fail to convert any mages though. So none of them were lost to retreat, which is sort of the appeal of doing the fatigue method as opposed to poison.
Right.
Because with poison damage, you tend to actually fail a fair number of the conversions just because anyone that's routing when they convert melts. Whereas with fatigue, you basically never actually rout from the fatigue damage. While you do get extra afflictions, as you pointed out, and in particular head afflictions, you don't actually wind up losing any of the Soulless.
Yeah, there's just so many mute afflictions. I don't think it's worth it. The best way to do it is if you're a communion slave, which these guys can all do. So
it is routing, actually.
Yeah, Well, yeah, I mean...
I'm surprised, actually. I didn't... Okay, well... I thought that the fatigue damage would be low enough that they would have an extremely low chance of routing.
Yeah, I don't really know how that part works, but clearly it didn't proc the route. Like, if these guys were actually running, they would be... I don't know if it's the fact that they're fatigued out that saved them, like they don't dissolve until their fatigue goes under 100, or if it's the fact that they're a communion slave.
That's what it is, actually, because you can do this with exhaustion units. Mindless units that are routing and exhausted don't actually melt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had done this with a final turn timer thing with an exhaustion thug. I remember this now. Yeah. Okay, so that's why he did it this way. He basically wanted to avoid losing these guys. The other thing is that the Astral Blood 1 mages, in terms of their battlefield potency, they're fine if they're mute because they don't actually lose pathing.
The what? Wait, Oh, yeah, but you don't... In my opinion, you don't want to use these guys in battles very much. But for forging and, like, wearing items, like, if you want this guy to cast horrors, good luck now. Well, this guy's fine. He didn't have an affliction, but, the afflictions do affect gear, so...
Right, yeah. So that guy's less good.
Yeah.
And then, as far as the blood hunting goes, they're also upkeep free for that now as well.
Yeah. So it's fine. You need a way to do it, right? So if you don't have an easier way to do it, this is fine. But I think, honestly, they should have an easy time doing Soul Vortex communions. And you can do both. If you fatigue them out with the chill auras, and then you kill them with the Soul Vortex, you're going to have fewer head afflictions. So... there's a lot of ways to skin a cat.
Yeah, and given that they had a Lich there, they could have slapped a Matrix on him.
Yeah. And don't they get that cross path natively? I thought the
Earth Astral? Yeah, they do. They get it on...
I meant Astral Death.
They get that too.
For Soul Vortex,
It's on the same mage, actually. It's
right.
Earth Death X1, where the X1 can be DF or S. D, F,
Right,
E,
right,
or
right.
S. Yeah.
Oh, my dogs are trying to play with me. Okay. Monster boar. Let's come back here and watch the... Actually, I need to pause real quick. Oh, wait, how do I... I've changed my recording software. I don't think the pause is the same button, and I forgot what I changed it to. So we're going to actually keep recording.
Okay.
I wanted to get my dogs out. They're like, they play with me. I'm like, okay, I'll take you outside. So, yeah, basically they kind of both outplayed each other here. But I think that this might kind of work for Vettigheim because it feels like Vettigheim wanted some more time to set up a trap.
Or, I mean, they were kind of evacuating anyway, so that they really are just kind of gearing up for that one battle. And, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you got those Grey Knights, presumably from an
Yeah.
event.
That's cool. Yeah, the other thing too is because this fort isn't siege, they can now, like try to move these guys out over here or something or whatever, rather than having to retreat out of a fort. So
Yeah, now they have options. Although that said, they do now have a fair number of units that are kind of stuck outside.
Oh, so this is what you'd been wanting to see, was phase 2 of the Zabalban army.
So we definitely are seeing a bigger mix of mages. So they're still kind of, especially given that this is a storm attempt, it makes total sense to still be relying on Aussies as your plan A. I am seeing gaps though. So air elementals would be very bad for this. I also don't see Army of Giants.
Did this trigger gem use?
No, but I mean, if you're doing Army of Giants on the Dark Vines in order to keep them at size 6, to let them basically be like size 6 elemental blockers, then you do need them clumped up for that AoE. Whereas he's using them in line, so presumably as more just like Evo bait or, just like offense bait in general. And his mages are kind of all balled up in the middle.
Well, he doesn't really, Vettigheim doesn't have a ton of, it's not like a big air nation, so... they're not going to be sending swarms of air elementals at you.
I mean, they do have the silver adepts. I was more thinking that like the reason that you care about like air elemental blocking or any like size 6 elemental blocking, because Vettigheim could do like mass ice elementals, for example. It's mostly just so that your mages don't get squished.
Yeah, I don't know if we can make any. There's not really much here that's going to indicate what the tech level is that I can see.
Yeah, we would need to see gems. The only, I guess, new stuff is that he is bringing a larger variety of mages, right? With the Enchantress, the Earth Adept, that's the hero, the Earth guy. And then he's got also one of the Anakis, which is the summon version, since only EA Shamballah can actually recruit them.
Oh, right.
Those guys are pretty good. They're like sort of the national vampire. In that they're like a summoned big blood mage. The difference being that they are demons, unfortunately. But they do have some upsides over vampire lords in that, in addition to like their broader pathing, they just get...
Well, they get free spawn beast bats. That's kind of one of the main attractions.
Yeah, and they also, like, in addition to bringing a couple of them into battle, they also free spawn them just like for free. Right. And well, this particular...
They're probably the best, I want to say, Blackheart Assassin in the game. Like, they're up there.
Yeah, because of the bats that they're bringing with them in fights, often tanking evocation. So like if you're like assassinating a water mage, you normally have to worry about Frozen Heart, just for example. But the beast bats will tank that for you.
Yeah, so that's cool. Are they blood 7 or 8?
In terms of
they're high. Yeah, they're pretty high blood. I can't remember where they are.
I think they're like 6 or 7. They're not like crazy high.
Yeah.
Double check though.
Ooh, Staff of the One God. So he's got a bunch of temp astral gems on this guy.
Oh, it's blood 7, yeah. So same tech level as Vamp Lords.
Okay, so pretty cool. I mean, not really any resistance from Vettigheim here, but...
Yes, we don't yet know what that army is really capable of, but it is kind of cool that, he's bringing out like a real stack with some diverse mage support.
Yeah, and I mean, presumably this army is going to just march towards Vettigheim's capital, especially since Gath seems to be making a play for this throne instead of coming for the cap. Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, only 2 provinces out now.
This is interesting. What is this about?
I assume that that's negotiated.
Yeah.
Just because they're not attacking any other Pangia provinces. I'm guessing that they just got that by agreement.
A fort's under construction. I wonder if they're building this fort and then they're going to pay them for it or something. But this also just indicates, too, especially if this is a trade... Potentially, it means these two are going to be allied against Gath. I mean, this normally indicates a degree of closeness and working together. They're willing to do that.
Yeah, because that's definitely more coordination than you expect from just like, casual teaming up on the same player type alliances. On the
Right.
other hand, it might just be that Pangia is just a very active diplomatic player, and he's, you know, just in
Yeah.
being active is more liable to make these sorts of arrangements.
Right. Okay, so I think that's it for Vedheim.
The one thing that I do want to say though is that if Shamballah is indeed just marching towards Vedi's cap and is planning on getting those spoils, that also does mean that he has to be the one to kill Vediheim's last stand.
Right, including the god, which is going to be certainly annoying.
Yeah, and given that Vediheim is pulling everything back, or had been trying to retreat out all those mages, that last stand is not going to be trivial by any means.
Right. This is I mean, this looks to be 100 Rim Vedi, and 100 Rim Vedi are scary, let me tell you. So.
Yeah, I mean, Gath had been able to deal with a pile of Rimvedi quite handily, but now Shamballah has to do the same trick.
Right. But Gath did it primarily with mages, He nuked them from orbit.
Yeah, and I mean, Shamballah is definitely bringing more mages this time, but nowhere near the quantity that Gath was bringing.
Right.
And certainly not in the evocation power.
Well, I hope we get to see. I hope Vedheim gets one more really good fight with this last core of Rim Vedi and whatever mages he has left in his god. Just because I feel like they haven't really had that one fight, which was just kind of like chef's kiss, mwah. And I hope they get that before they, exit the game. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is their last chance to do it.
Yeah.
Or, most likely to be their last chance. If they actually can pull it off, they might have more down the line, but that requires actually winning first.
Oh, so this is interesting. Oh, dude. Pangia, this is one of the best uses for these horrors, is embedding them in an army. You have to worry about gifts of heavening them, but it's really hard to cheese guys, because they teleport.
Yeah,
it's way faster than flying.
It's funny. Yeah, no, it's funny. We were actually just talking about this of like one of the best uses for horror units that you use, even when they are in their commander version like this, is having just like one in an army exactly because the
this is a casual Wind of Death caster right here, and
teleport so flying, you're actually in the air for a turn, which means that enemy mages typically have are able to get one round of casting off. Whereas horrors, by teleporting, they actually just instantly appear, which means that they go before any spells can be cast.
Yeah.
Oh, and
this looks kind of interesting.
I assume that's a transformed guy.
Interesting. Wait, what is this guy? Okay, that's just a celestial soldier. For some reason, I kept looking like his commander. Oh, yeah. Oh, this is a naiad.
Okay, yeah. So naiads are when they do get a big form like this, they actually become decent supercaster chassis just because the Nature Water Crosspath gives you so many good buff spells, namely Moss Body, of course, but also in this case Foul Vapors for the battlefield clear spect and the decent self buffs that you just get from nature in general.
Yeah.
And with the pan there, I assume that he was doing Iron Warriors on him as well.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very... Where did he go? Did I somehow just not see the Etten? Where did the Etten go?
The Foul Vapors is gone, so maybe he was set to retreat, but that would be weird. You don't typically have your Foul Vapors caster retreat.
Where did you go, buddy? He's got a Ring of Returning.
Oh, he must have taken damage from his own vapors.
Liquid Body. Moss Body. What's his per... 5. Okay, yeah, so that's not super well thought through.
Well, I mean, you can afford it. It just send him home. Okay, so that's what happened there. I guess he just didn't want to risk it, given that these transformed naiads are fairly expensive, especially given that it's got a great chassis.
What I love about this is we're starting to see a lot of interesting variation mixed in this pan army. This is no longer just I'm going to run at you with a bunch of Centaur Sages, though he will. He's mixing in these traps. He's got now horrors mixed in the army.
Or at least one horror. Only one so far.
Yeah, one horror. So, And this horror is actually really important because one of the ways we were saying you fight this is you cheese it with Wind of Death and stuff. And that's what clearly Tienchi's trying to do. And this is one of the best anti-cheese defenses. So
You
Very
still
cool.
can if you're trying to do that thing with like, mass evocation into the blob and then returning or something to that effect. You still can do that
Right.
just by having a decent troop bodyguard with them as well. Because you don't need that much, right? Like you only need to
Yeah.
have the horror caught up on other units for a couple rounds in order to make your trap work.
Right. But it's very good against this like single mage cheese, even though you're right, there are other things they can do.
Yeah, exactly. And because Pan had seen that tienchi was in fact deploying single mages, he's actually bringing the perfect answer. Or
Yeah.
he's bringing the perfect answer to what tienchi is actually doing, rather.
Right. Cool. So I was seeing what is it that the Pangia finds it worth casting Ghost Riders, and it's to kill a tin gem thug. So it's
Well,
worth
Ghost
it. It's
Riders is
technically a
cheap.
good trade.
Yeah, Ghost Riders is cheap enough that you can just afford it. And it's
Yeah.
also a matter of convenience, right? Like you don't need to worry about it
Right.
if it's just Ghost Riders.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, TNG rating here. Oh, this is kind of interesting. So there's 3 of the Immortal Agartha heroes.
Yeah, these multi-heroes you can actually get in decent quantities over the course of a game, especially if you're running Luck 3.
Yeah. Okay, TNG knocks this army off. Agartha storms this fort. Nothing inside. TNG has started to consolidate, I think. I think this is now more than was here the previous turn.
Well, that's also, remember, the summoning zone. So, like, when you see a big pile of cubes there, that's just because they come from there. But you're right, they did bring in the
No, the
Dowling
elves
Shield.
are here, though, right? So there
Yeah.
were a bunch of these elves that were in this province, and the elves have now migrated over this way.
Yeah, so maybe he's planning on fighting Agartha for one of his last stands, which kind of makes sense. Agartha has been annoying, and that is also an army that he can actually expect to beat. So,
Right.
pick and choose your battles. You may as well pick the one that you can win.
Right. It's always better when the final note you go out on is we'll call it a winning note. Gath.
Looks like they're just...
TNG just pinged this. Yeah, it's not super clear. Is Gath going to go for this throne? I don't think so.
I would expect Shamballah to go for that throne, but Gath is definitely posturing in that region. One of the things that we don't see, like kind of the fog of war for us, is the diplomatic situation between Shamballah and the Big Two.
Right. Especially since Zabalba hasn't been talking.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing is that neither of the other two have mentioned, whether or not they are like already preparing for the end game where they break away from their one strong ally.
Ooh, get out that popcorn.
Oh,
we got
do
a
have big
battle.
fight.
Okay.
So TNG against...
Who do you think wins this?
Gut, I would say TNG, just because they've been scripting better throughout the game.
Yeah.
Looking at the battlefield, I would say that, not being able to see what gems Arithia has on their units or what items, it's definitely something that Arithia could win. Like, just in terms
Yeah.
of looking at the armies here, a big number of Deducados can just do a lot of work, but they do have to be geared and gemmed up in order to make that a thing. Whereas the fact
Yeah.
that the only item spell that we've seen go off so far is from Tienchi's Stormstaff, just
Right.
makes
And
me,
that's really good against these flyers, so.
Yeah, so like my knee-jerk response is basically that I expect TNG to be better prepared and better scripted and to win off the back of that, rather than off of any like resource or research advantage.
Okay, so let's watch it and we'll do a deep dive after the battle.
Oh, you want to do it in that order this time? Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah, somebody requested that in one of the videos, and
watch
Blood
first,
Rain, Wailing Winds.
Yeah, and those
Ooh,
are the
Gifts of Heaven.
TNG had actually mentioned before that that was what he was going to be using, under the assumption that Arithia wasn't going to be prepared for it.
We don't have Will of Fates on TNG's side. And that is important, because versus Gifts of Heaven, Will of Fates is kind of the only thing.
Yeah, well, you can also do stuff just in terms of reducing the accuracy, and the Storm Staff
Right.
already helps with that a little bit. What's the death spell? Is that Darkness?
Wailing Winds.
Oh, right.
And Blood Rain. So we are having a fair number of people retreat from Arithia's side. These guys have been buffed up with Wooden Warriors. I assume TNG got Mass Protection off. They've got Mass Regen on them as well.
Did you say that he went for Mass Protection and not Army of Gold?
Right. It's got a strength buff on them, but doesn't have like weapons of sharpness or anything in that vein.
My thinking with that, honestly, might just be due to gem shortage. That TNG doesn't have any more of the Earth Temp Gem items, and he probably just like considers what Earth Gems he has left to be too valuable. Oh, it's Wrathful Skies.
Wrathful
Okay.
Skies is up.
That's why he's not doing Army of Gold. Okay, yeah, obviously. That makes much more sense.
But the X factor in this is Arithia has Will of Fates up, so it's looking like they might run.
Yeah, I mean, it already looks like that enough of their mages had already been retreating that tienchi's just going to run through.
Okay.
Because Arithia, in addition to having Will of Fates, they also had Army of Gold themselves, which meant that they had the shock vulnerability on their units.
Right. What's the final shock resistance? Because the Bless gives you 15, but he also casts the buff, so they're at 20. So these guys truly are immune. These guys only had 5.
Yeah, so he did the buff for his non-sacred stuff, which also makes total sense because he's placing a lot of value in those cubes. And looking at the death toll here, yeah, pretty decent.
Yeah.
I honestly would
Another casual, 40 dead mages from Arithia.
I honestly would have expected Arithia's casualties to be smaller, not from, any expectation of them winning the battle, but just on account of the fact that I thought that they would have run away much more quickly.
Yeah, they held out for a while. Yep, the silver lining in this is the Fairy Queen.
And the Hesperide, yeah. Those are
they both got away. So that's pretty nice.
Hesperides are great, but they are also fairly expensive.
Right.
All right, so he lost his queen, so that's the queened up version of one of the princesses. And actually, another thing that would have caused all those mage losses is the communion stuff. So all the slaves would have, of course, been lost in the battle.
Right. Yeah, the slaves are kind of forfeit there. Let's take a look here as we're diving in a bit deeper. 34 slaves. That's a really... I don't like that.
That's
Unless there's some very specific
yeah.
spell. You're wasting just a lot of the mages. Because it's not like you put... The only time you would do that is you want the path boost. Because once you get to 30 mages, you can't support a bigger communion because every...
Do you think he was aiming for Master and Slave and just had the person who's supposed to cast it route too early?
No, I don't think there's a way. I mean, I'll go check real quick, but...
Because with 32 slaves, that's pretty easy to boost up the rest.
Well, let's find out real quick. We'll skim through here.
It would most likely be the queen if it is a Master and Slave play. Okay, no, it's not. I was just thinking just because they have bigger pathing, but no. Yeah, you would need both boosters and some decent astral rolls. Could the Hesperide be doing it, maybe? I know that she has a decent base astral. I think she's Fire 3, Astral 3 base? Okay, nope, she's doing nature stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that's part of this. So, I mean, so we've got most of the big army buffs up on Arithia's side. The problem is just morale plays are really strong. That's I think honestly, if they didn't run, I think Arithia would have won. The other problem is I think it's too many slaves.
The other thing is that he's not using any elementals, which are huge even in these big late game fights. Obviously Conj 5 elementals are king of the battles, but even as fights go late, just a couple air elementals are extremely disruptive. And the more the merrier when it comes down to fights like this in particular. Because imagine an air elemental gets lucky and squishes a Wailing Winds caster. Suddenly you completely turn this battle around.
Right. That's true. So tienchi wins this pretty cleanly. They convert Charm a Worm Mage. So I thought this Worm Mage death down here was temporary, but they actually stole him, so that's nice.
That's huge, actually, yeah. So part of the reason...
They do lose 3 of their Celestial Masters, though, and that, those are cap only. Those are hard to replace. Let's see if they had gear on them. I mean, they'll probably pick it up, but...
Yeah, I'm sure that they did have gear, because tienchi's been very consistent about gearing. Oh, they didn't. Okay. So that's probably why they wound up dying.
Yeah, it's only if Liu Bei... Let's see who's dead here at the end.
It looks like they were on advance and cast, so whoever died would have marched forward.
Okay, I know, I'm just saying here.
Oh, I see.
Liu Bei survived. Okay, that was the only guy who had significant gear. Okay.
And part of the thing is that gear also contributed, of course, to his survival because it gave him that extra shock resistance.
Right. That's, of course, true as well.
But yeah, so
tienchi...
One of the things I was going to say, though, is that because Worm Mages have that bug reformation thing, it can make them a little more susceptible to Charm and other short-range kill spells.
Yeah.
Actually.
Right. Yeah. If it's harder to die to other things and you lose the battle, you're more likely to die to the thing that will actually kill you, which charm will. So that's kind of interesting. Devils, a tart, and a golem walk into a bar.
So I think he's just leading around the devils. And that I don't like
Yeah, I
these
don't love
golem
this.
folks. Yeah.
I don't like them either. To me, this is just like extremely expensive casual raiding. Like, I would kill this whole stack this turn with a magic face attack, most likely.
Yeah, well, I mean, TNT's hard pressed enough that he just might not have the resources spare to do that. But I agree that
Yeah.
it's not difficult to kill that group, and it's very, very expensive for how effectively it can raid.
Yeah. This also does, I can't. Is this our first tart we've seen from Arithia? I can't remember.
I mean, I knew that we'd seen them before. I'm not sure if we'd seen them in battle.
Yeah.
When you get those feeble-minded commander guys, I actually do like using them as cheap raiders, but you don't put gear on them. You just like send them out, and that's a mage version, right?
Yeah.
So-
I wonder if Vetiheim would be willing to send gems like water gems to Tienchi for Tienchi to do Vengeful Water. Because Tienchi did kind of help him out. Like, the Vetiheim ship was sinking, and Tienchi's like, I'll jump on and save you. And then Tienchi gets on, and it's like, the ship is fucking sinking.
It's still sinking.
It's still sinking.
Can you check the global list?
Yeah.
Okay, so it didn't go up this turn. He did mention that he was going to try to cast it, so maybe it already bounced.
Yeah, that's possible.
I'm just not sure what it would have bounced to because he was doing a massive overcast. I'm not sure what it wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think of would be Illwinter. but even
Illwinter.
then-
Maybe Maelstrom's been overcast once already.
Yeah.
I don't think anything else here has been overcast. Maybe Mother Oak.
I think we'll have
Mother
to wait
Oak
until
has.
TNG reports back in. Because
Yeah.
either we'll see the Vengeful Waters go up, or they'll have to tell us that it bounced because there's no indication.
And that's the nice news, by the way, of that's the nice thing about whenever TNG's telling us something, is we know we're going to hear back what it is. It's never like we're going to have to speculate. We're going to get the full breakdown.
True,
So that is
yeah.
nice. Okay, so let's look at tactical victory here. TNG won this big fight against Arithia, killed a ton of mages.
And I actually do
But
think that matters.
Strategically, does he push forward here? So how many guys are left? It's not many. Yeah, it's only 80 guys. Does he push forward into this where either Arithia can bail, being replaced by a Zabalban army, or do you pull back to here? Because he had wanted, I don't even think he was, because he did demonic cleansing this fight. I don't think this army was even set up to fight Arithia. I think this army was primarily set up to fight Zabalba.
Oh, well, that's interesting because TNG mentioned specifically in their messages that he was going to try to kill an Erythian army, remember?
Oh, let's see. But he had also said he wanted to do a good fight for the Throne of Water with Zabalba.
Oh, yeah. I guess it might have just been en route. Like the army that's heading to fight whoever was attacking the Throne of Water. And then
How
it just
badass would that be if he's like kind of expecting to fight Arithia here, but he's like just takes that fight in stride and is like, that was like level 1. Like, let's get, like, we're not going back. This army's not going back. We're going to level 2 where he's expecting to fight Zabalba.
that could work. The only thing that I would be worried about with that though is that the army is small enough that it can be bumped. So Erythia's army moving off that throne, only what's in that province and any reinforcements that he moves into it. So if he tries to break siege and combine armies, he could wind up being split by Arithia.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually possible this army could push him as well. So, like, Arithia could move everything here. This army wouldn't push him, but I think both of these have a good chance of it.
How many cubes are in that army, actually?
What's the format? Is it... I know it's like move speed. Is it also HP? 22?
It's okay. So the army value thing is actually very, very complicated. But basically, it's you can check it up on IlWiki. It's under Loggy's notes. But basically, it's Illwinter's best attempt at determining the strength of the units. So
Okay.
it includes things like ethereal counts as 4x HP. It includes things like length of weapons and number of weapons. So it's actually very complicated. It's not just like how big is your army.
Gotcha.
It's like a bunch of different things in terms of like trying to evaluate how strong any given unit is. And that's partly why those Veti units, the Elk Riders, are so heavily overrated in the system, because they have both a bunch of HP and high mat move and a bunch of weapons. So they kind of like check all the boxes for what an elite unit should look
Right.
like. even though
Right.
they're not particularly elite themselves.
Yeah, you can say that again.
But yeah, so it basically is like Ilwinter's best attempt at figuring out
Okay.
what the actual worth of the army is, and it does account for things like size and trample.
Okay, well, in that case, this army might not be able to push this one. It might only be this one.
Yeah, I will say though that that having a bunch of high protection, high length weapon units also does count for a lot.
Okay.
So depending on how many units are there and like it's got some draconians there as well, it might still be able to push it. I would say that those two are probably pretty comparable, such that it would at least be a roll. So it'd be very uncertain if like for both parties,
Yeah.
like if tienchi were to try to move into the Erythian army and vice versa, neither side could really be like confident that the push would work in their favor.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that covers this theater of war then. Some small fights over here with Nephil shamans. You don't keep these though; they're temporary.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's no Nephil shaman. It's too bad. The southern theater.
They count as like horror attack type stuff in that the province goes unclaimed if it's
Right.
captured. Although, if I recall correctly, the flag is different if it gets taken from these event battles as opposed to
Right.
the
It's
horror
that like darker gray flag.
as opposed to the red flag. I'm not sure why
Yeah.
they did that because it's functionally still like an empty province, but yeah.
It's probably for like what things can retreat there or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know when that would actually matter. Okay, so I think for Tianchi, the summary is he's had a big victory against Arithia. He gets to choose whether he goes for this to defend this throne or to double back. He's not really putting any effort into defending this, and it looks hopeless defending against Pangia.
I mean,
and he's got a doom stack assembled here against the Gartha and
you say that,
Pangia.
but he's doing some effective counter raiding. Like, look at those little Wyvern supported groups.
Yeah, these are cool. I mean, he's just running into a couple PD. In this case, these guys. So yeah, I mean, he's doing some things, but
he's trying to.
He's not resisting these armies, is I guess what I should say.
Yeah, but he is trying to make it as expensive as possible and delaying the return on investment that Pangia is getting from his lands and trying to claw back whatever provinces he can, however he can.
Right. He's not saying, he's not giving Pangia like, oh, just because you take something, I'm not going to take it back. He's going to try to do efficient raiding when he thinks it might pay off.
And if you look at the siege force that Pan has assembled, that's actually also kind of interesting to me, in that on the province north of the throne there, north of the
throne, this one. Yeah.
So he's
Thralls, advertising. Does somebody have some vampires?
Yeah, so that was the big thing. But the other thing is that he actually did buy a bunch of harpies, which is cool. And then sprites are from the fairy queens. They don't have a ton of siege strength just because the actual base strength on that unit is so low. So while they do get the bonus from being flyers, it's still not, impressive. But they do have high mat move, so you can move them around very quickly. And presumably because they're magic beings, he was just leading them around with those sages.
Right. Okay. So, tactical victory for Tianchi, but still bleeding out fast as ever.
Can you look at the province graph real quick, actually? Because with his counter rates, he might not have even lost. Oh yeah, he's actually up territory this turn.
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously not up by a lot, and it certainly isn't turning things around. But given how steeply he was falling the last couple turns, that's
it's something. It's not nothing.
To staunch the bleeding a little bit. Even Vedheim was able to retake a little bit of ground, but again, he's so far down the graph.
Yeah.
That it's
this doesn't matter. This is negligible, but this could be the start of a comeback. I think it's very unlikely, but
yeah, Vengeful Water would be a much bigger tell here, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of his chances of recovery, just because.
And did we already look at Vedheim? I think we did. Yeah.
Yeah, that was where they did the little dance with Gath.
All right, I think it's time we scroll through these, see if I missed anything. This was the
bounce. What was
this?
Yeah.
Oh, this was the bounce.
Where the Vedheim was retreating and Gath was trying to lay a trap.
Yes. This was the fun battle. And that one we saw as well. Okay, I think we've seen everything. Man, that was a fun battle. That was cool. I mean, what? Okay, so here's my final question for you, closing out this episode. Based on what we saw from Arithia here, what do you think? Because we've been saying they need to bring, up their play. This was, I'll just throw this out as the starter to the answer, is this is probably the best Arithian army we've seen so far. Had gems, put up most of the big spells. If they hadn't run, they might have won the fight.
Yeah, I
You
mean
know,
they
there
just
were,
need gear. Like that's the big thing.
yeah,
And they also need round one stuff in general. Like that army was a
right.
little bit harder to punish, but some very basic stuff like air elementals, round one flyers, even just like round one gifts from heaven spam if they can do that. Because they
Hmm.
definitely do have like you can either put gems and earth boots on an earth random mystic or get the Dedukudos with the right randoms and boots. Like they definitely have ways of pulling it off, and unlike Gath, which has to rely on slow to recruit throne mages, Arithia can get those guys naturally. So they definitely have options to fight these traps, and they need to start using them.
Yeah. The way I kind of feel about it is I feel like Arithia, like, if we've been seeing kind of like level 4 play, they've upgraded to like level 5 or 6. But the other players are on like 8
Level,
or 9, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I mean, fair play to that. That the other players are performing at an extremely high level, and you can't like say that Arithia is playing poorly because they're not at this like toppest echelon of play.
Right.
But when your opponents are playing at that level, you need to be at the same level to keep up. And in that case, to me, mostly the big thing is just gear. That you need to be gearing up your armies and also just like countermeasures to traps. In particular, because I feel like Arithia has kind of been on the receiving end of battlefield
Yeah.
clear stuff for pretty much the entire game, right? Like
Yeah.
they were
Ever
hit by
since Atlantis died, it's been nonstop.
yeah, like they were hit by the god drop from Vedheim. They know that Pangia is bringing that same sort of god. Like there are just so many things that are going to be like deadly to human mages. And given that Arithia is relying pretty much exclusively on those human mages, they need to be featuring the countermeasures in their armies by default.
Yeah.
And yeah, like being caught off by like one trap is like, okay, you got caught by something unexpected, it happens, no problem. But just very consistently not having that preparation, it starts to be like, okay, you know this is coming, right?
Right. The other thing that got me thinking about is this is the first time in the game we've seen Blood Rain and Wailing Winds come out.
Is it?
And that had me. We've
But
seen Wailing Winds, but I don't think we've seen it comboed with Blood Rain yet.
that's so surprising to me because like TNG had been in Blood for a while, right? Like since like turn 30 or so, we've been calling them out for hunting with their Zotsub. Um,
That's true. Maybe they did do it in one of these fights where the armies got nuked from orbit, and it just.
it just
I
wasn't
was
fast
so
enough.
focused on the meteors falling from the sky, I never noticed it. But
The other thing is,
that just got me thinking about Zabalba.
Vedheim and Tabalba should both be able to do that too, yeah. So I would have
Yeah.
assumed that we would have seen it from Vedheim if no one else.
Did they do it in this? I wonder if we won't be able to tell. They didn't trigger gym use, but that's something to look for too, because that's going to be. It's not going to be super effective against Gath because Gath has demon troops,
Right.
but it is going to be one of the things that Pan is going to struggle to deal with. They have things like if the battle only lasts 4 turns before you do Vortex of Returning, and you dropped 3,473 meteors on them in those 5 turns. You might not be too worried about it, but it is in a traditional long battle. It's going to be tough for Pan to deal with.
Yeah. Pan, I think, is going to struggle in long fights in general, but they have the upshot of just being able to do so much damage that they can make the fights be short.
Yeah. Okay. Closing thoughts.
No, I think we actually just about covered it this time.
All right. Well, viewers, thank you for making it to the end with us here. And as always, really do appreciate you spending your afternoons or your evenings with me recording these. So,
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun as always.
all right. Take care.